Captain Jake Murphy stared at the coffee stain on his desk and wondered if exploring space was supposed to be this boring. The Terra's Pride had been traveling through empty space for 3 weeks without finding anything more interesting than a few asteroids. His crew of 43 people was getting restless, and he could not blame them. The ship was not very big or fancy. Earth had built it for simple exploration missions, not for fighting wars or making first contact with aliens. Most other species in the galaxy thought humans were too dangerous to talk to anyway. They called humans Deathworlders because Earth was such a harsh planet that only crazy tough creatures could survive there. Jake did not think of himself as particularly scary. He was just a guy from Ohio who liked flying spaceships and seeing new places. Sure, humans could handle more pain and stress than most aliens, but that did not make them monsters. At least he hoped it did not. "Captain Murphy, you need to hear this." Lisa Carter's voice came over the ship's communication system. She was the best communications officer in the fleet, and she sounded excited about something. Jake walked to the bridge and found Lisa hunched over her equipment. Her screen showed waves and patterns that meant nothing to him, but her eyes were bright with discovery. "What do you have for me, Lisa?" "It's a signal, sir. Very faint, but definitely artificial. Someone is broadcasting from the Kepler 442 system." She pointed at her main screen. "The signal uses basic math sequences. Prime numbers, Fibonacci sequences, that sort of thing. It's clearly from an intelligent species." Dr. Amy Ross looked up from her science station. She was a small woman with gray hair who knew more about alien life than anyone else on the ship. "How far away is Kepler 442? "About 6 days at maximum speed," Lisa answered. "But sir, there's more. I've been working on the pattern and I think it's a distress call." Jake felt his stomach tighten. A distress call meant someone was in trouble. It also meant first contact with a new alien species, which could go very badly. Humans had a reputation for being violent and unpredictable. Most aliens preferred to avoid them entirely. "Are you sure it's a distress call?" Jake asked. Lisa nodded and played the signal through the bridge speakers. It was mostly static, but underneath Jake could hear a pattern. 3 short bursts, 3 long ones, 3 short again. Even across the vastness of space and between different species, some things were universal. "That's SOS," said Tony Blake from the engineering station. He was a big man with grease under his fingernails and a talent for fixing anything that broke. "Whoever sent this knows about Earth distress signals. Or it's a coincidence," Dr. Ross said. "The pattern could mean something completely different to them." Jake studied the star charts on the main screen. Kepler 442 was not in Earth territory, but it was not claimed by any of the major galactic powers either. It was just empty space as far as anyone knew. "Do we have authorization to investigate?" asked Maria Santos, the ship's security chief. She was always thinking about rules and protocols. "No," Jake admitted. "Our mission is to survey the Tau Ceti system. We're supposed to be there in 4 days." The bridge went quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Jake looked at his crew and saw the same thing in all their faces. They wanted to help. It was a very human thing to do, rushing toward danger to help strangers. Maybe that was part of why other aliens found them scary. "Sir," Lisa said quietly, "the signal is getting weaker. If someone is in trouble, we might be their only hope." Jake thought about his orders and his responsibilities. Then he thought about someone out there sending desperate messages into the void, hoping someone would hear and care enough to help. "Tony, how long would it take to change course for Kepler 442? "About 20 minutes to reprogram our navigation system," Tony replied with a grin. "Assuming we're going to do something incredibly stupid and possibly heroic. Dr. Ross, what are the chances this is some kind of trap?" The scientist considered the question carefully. "Low. The signal pattern suggests genuine distress and the location is too remote for most known hostile species. However, we should be prepared for anything." Jake looked around the bridge one more time. These were good people, and he was about to risk all their lives on a hunch. But leaving someone to die in the darkness of space was not something he could live with. "All hands, this is the captain," he announced over the ship's communication system. "We've received what appears to be a distress signal from an unknown alien species. Investigating this signal is not part of our mission, and it could be dangerous. I'm calling for a crew vote. All in favor of responding to the distress call, press 1 on your personal communicators. All opposed, press 2. Jake waited, watching the vote counter on his command screen. One by one, the numbers came in. When the final vote was recorded, the result was unanimous. 43 votes in favor, 0 opposed. Well then, Jake said with a smile. I guess we're going to go meet some aliens. Tony, set course for Kepler 442, maximum speed. Lisa, keep monitoring that signal and see if you can decode any more information. Dr. Ross, start preparing first contact protocols. Maria, have your security team ready but keep weapons powered down. We're going in peaceful. The Terra's Pride changed course, its engines pushing the ship toward the unknown. Jake felt the familiar mix of excitement and fear that came with venturing into unexplored space. He had no idea what they would find at Kepler 442, but he knew his crew would face it together. As the ship accelerated toward its new destination, Lisa continued working on the alien signal. The patterns were becoming clearer, and what she found made her stomach turn cold. The signal was not just a distress call. It was a countdown, and according to her calculations, whatever was happening at Kepler 442 would be over in less than 5 days. She looked at Captain Murphy, who was studying star charts and planning their approach. She decided to wait before telling him about the countdown. There would be time for bad news later. Right now, they were humanity's first representatives to a species in crisis, and that was both terrifying and wonderful. The Terra's Pride flew through the darkness between stars, carrying its crew toward their first real test as ambassadors of Earth. None of them knew that they were about to discover why the galaxy feared the Deathworlders, and why that fear might be exactly what was needed to save an entire civilization. The Terra's Pride dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Captain Jake Murphy stood on the bridge looking at the main screen as sensors revealed their destination. The system had one star similar to Earth's sun and several planets orbiting around it. There, Dr. Amy Ross pointed at the third planet from the star. That's where the signal is coming from. The planet was beautiful. Swirling blue oceans covered most of the surface, with small continents scattered between them. White clouds drifted across a clean atmosphere that reminded Jake of Earth before pollution became a problem. I'm detecting artificial structures, reported Kevin Adams from the sensor station. He was young and eager, fresh out of the Space Academy. Something is floating above the ocean surface near the northern continent. Lisa Carter's communication equipment came alive with new signals. Captain, they know we're here. I'm receiving a transmission on multiple frequencies. Put it through the main speakers, Jake ordered. The bridge filled with a sound unlike anything they had ever heard. It was musical and complex, like wind chimes mixed with whale songs. The alien language was completely foreign, but there was something beautiful about it. Can you translate any of it? Jake asked. Working on it, Kevin replied, his fingers flying over the translation computer. The patterns are very regular. Give me a few minutes. While Kevin worked on the language, Dr. Ross studied the sensor readings from the planet. Captain, these readings are remarkable. The ocean is completely clean. No pollution, no radiation, no chemical contamination. The atmosphere is perfect for most known life forms. What about the floating structures? Maria Santos asked from her security station. They appear to be cities, Dr. Ross answered with wonder in her voice. But they're not built like anything I've ever seen. It's as if they grew rather than being constructed. Kevin suddenly looked up from his translation work. Captain, I think I have something. The basic grammar is becoming clear. They're asking us to come closer. They want to talk. Jake felt his heart rate increase. This was it. First contact with a new alien species. Everything he said and did in the next few hours could determine the future. Relationship between humans and these beings. Take us into orbit around their planet, he ordered Tony Blake at the engineering station. Nice and slow. We don't want to appear threatening. As the Terra's Pride moved closer to the planet, the floating cities became more visible. They were absolutely stunning. Crystalline towers reached toward the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to be made of light itself. Gardens floated between the buildings, filled with plants that glowed softly in colors Jake had never seen before. Captain, Lisa announced. They're asking permission to beam someone aboard our ship. They want to meet us face to face. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. This was the moment of truth. Dr. Ross, any concerns about alien contact? We should meet in the cargo bay, she replied. It's the largest space on the ship, and we can set up atmospheric controls there in case they breathe something different than we do. 20 minutes later, Jake stood in the cargo bay with Dr. Ross, Kevin Adams, and Maria Santos. They had cleared out the equipment and set up a simple table with chairs. It seemed like the best they could do for humanity's first diplomatic meeting with aliens. A column of blue light appeared in the center of the room. When it faded, 3 alien beings stood before them. Jake had to stop himself from gasping. The aliens were tall and elegant, almost 7 feet in height. Their skin appeared to be made of some kind of living crystal that shifted between blue and green colors. They had large eyes that seemed to hold infinite depth, and their movements were graceful beyond anything Jake had ever seen. The alien in the center stepped forward and spoke in that musical language. Kevin's translation device converted the words into English. Greetings, beings from the distant world. I am Ambassador Zelna of the Vith. We thank you for answering our call for help. Jake cleared his throat and tried to sound diplomatic. I am Captain Jake Murphy of the Earthship Terra's Pride. We received your distress signal and came to offer assistance. Zelna's crystalline features showed surprise. Earth? You are the ones called Deathworlders? The way the alien said the word made Jake uncomfortable. There was fear in Zelna's voice, but also something that might have been hope. We're humans, Jake replied carefully. Some people call us Deathworlders, but we prefer to think of ourselves as explorers and helpers. Zelna exchanged rapid words with the other 2 aliens. Kevin's translator could not keep up with their quick speech, but their body language suggested they were arguing about something. Finally, Zelna turned back to Jake. Forgive us. We have heard stories about your species throughout the galaxy. Most beings fear the Deathworlders, but we are desperate. Perhaps what makes you feared is exactly what we need. What kind of help do you need? Dr. Ross asked. Zelna's crystal skin darkened to a deep blue color. Our world is peaceful. We have lived in harmony for thousands of years. We have no weapons, no military, no concept of warfare. We are completely defenseless. Defenseless against what? Jake asked, though he was starting to guess the answer. The Korthak Dominion, Zelna said, and the other aliens made sounds of distress. They are destroyers. They travel from world to world, taking resources and enslaving peaceful populations. They have already destroyed 6 civilizations in our sector of the galaxy. Maria Santos stepped forward. When will they arrive? Our calculations suggest 3 days, Zelna replied. We sent our distress call hoping someone might offer evacuation assistance or sanctuary for our people. We never expected the legendary Deathworlders to respond. Jake felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. 3 days to evacuate an entire planet's population was impossible. The Terra's Pride could maybe carry a few hundred people, but the floating cities appeared to house millions. How many Vith live on your world? Dr. Ross asked. Approximately 47 million, Zelna answered. We know it is impossible to evacuate everyone. We had hoped to at least save our children and our cultural records. Kevin Adams looked up from his translation equipment. Ambassador Zelna, tell us about the Korthak Dominion. How many ships do they usually travel with? Zelna consulted a device that appeared to be grown from the same crystal as their skin. Intelligence reports suggest a fleet of over 200 vessels. They prefer overwhelming force against defenseless populations. The cargo bay fell silent. Jake looked at his crew and saw his own thoughts reflected in their faces. One small exploration ship against a fleet of 200 warships was not a fight they could win. It was not even a fight they could survive. But leaving 47 million peaceful beings to die or be enslaved was not something any human could accept. Jake thought about Earth's history, about all the times humans had faced impossible odds and fought anyway. Maybe this was why the galaxy feared them. Not because they were evil, but because they were too stubborn to know when to quit. Ambassador Zelna, Jake said slowly, we need to see your planet's defenses and learn everything you can tell us about the Korthak. If we're going to help you, we need to understand what we're facing. Zelna's crystal skin brightened with what Jake hoped was relief. You will help us, even knowing you face certain destruction? Jake looked around at his crew one more time. Maria nodded firmly. Dr. Ross straightened her shoulders. Kevin Adams managed a shaky smile. We're humans, Jake said simply. Helping people is what we do. For the first time since arriving, Zelna made a sound that the translator recognized as laughter. But there was sadness in it too. Now I understand why the galaxy fears the Deathworlders. You are completely insane, Jake smiled back. That's what they tell us. The Korthak Dominion fleet dropped out of hyperspace 2 days early, catching everyone by surprise. Captain Jake Murphy was in the Vith capital city when the alarm signal started echoing across the floating platforms. Ambassador. Zelna's crystal skin turned a dark red color that Jake had learned meant extreme fear. They are here, the alien whispered. The destroyers have come. Jake activated his communication device. Lisa, what are we looking at? Lisa Carter's voice crackled through from the Terra's Pride, which was hidden behind one of the planet's 3 moons. It's a big fleet, Captain. I count over 200 ships. They're forming an attack pattern around the planet. Any attempt at communication? They're broadcasting on all frequencies. Kevin is translating now. Jake looked around the Vythe command center. Dozens of aliens worked at stations that looked like they were grown from living crystal. Their musical language filled the air, but the beauty of their voices could not hide their terror. Captain Murphy, Kevin Adams' voice came through the communicator. The Korthak are demanding immediate surrender. They're giving the Vythe 1 hour to prepare for evacuation to slave ships. Jake felt his jaw clench. In the past 2 days, he had learned a lot about the Vythe. They were artists, scientists, and philosophers who had created a civilization based on harmony and beauty. The idea of these gentle beings in chains made his stomach turn. Patch me through to the Korthak fleet, Jake ordered. Sir, are you sure that's wise? Maria Santos asked. She had been studying Korthak military tactics and did not like what she had found. Probably not, but we need to try diplomacy first. A few minutes later, Jake found himself looking at the main screen in the Vythe command center. The image showed a massive alien creature with gray scarred skin and eyes like black stones. This had to be the Korthak commander. I am General Thrax of the Korthak Dominion, the alien growled through the translator. You will surrender this world immediately or face total destruction. I am Captain Jake Murphy of the Earth vessel Terra's Pride, Jake replied, trying to keep his voice steady. These people have done nothing to you. Why don't we discuss this peacefully? General Thrax made a sound that might have been laughter. Earth? You are the mythical Deathworlders? I thought your species was just a story to frighten children. We're real enough, Jake said. And we're asking you to leave this system peacefully. You dare to threaten me? Thrax leaned closer to his camera. I have 200 warships. You have 1 small vessel. Even if the stories about Deathworlders are true, you cannot fight an entire fleet. Jake felt Ambassador Zelna move closer behind him. The Vythe was trembling, but trying to be brave. General Thrax, please. We will give you anything you want. Our technology, our resources, just leave our people free. Your freedom ended the moment my fleet arrived, Thrax replied coldly. You have 30 minutes to begin loading onto the slave ships. Anyone who resists will be destroyed. The communication ended, leaving the command center in silence. Jake looked around at the Vythe faces surrounding him. Even in their fear, they maintained their dignity and grace. Captain, Dr. Amy Ross's voice came through his communicator. I've finished analyzing the Korthak tactical data. Their ships are powerful, but their strategies are basic. They're used to fighting defenseless populations, not actual military resistance. What about their weapons? Heavy plasma cannons and missile systems. Their ships are built for destroying cities, not ship-to-ship combat. They rely on overwhelming numbers rather than tactical skill. Jake felt a small spark of hope. Tony, how are our modifications coming along? Tony Blake sounded tired but determined. We've converted the mining laser into a focused beam weapon. It won't penetrate their main ships, but it should handle their smaller fighters. I've also rigged the cargo bay manipulator arms to deploy defensive drones. Drones? Mining robots with improvised explosive charges. Danny Foster came up with the idea. Kid's got a twisted imagination. Jake smiled despite their situation. Danny Foster was their youngest pilot, barely 22 years old. He was also the best pilot Jake had ever seen, capable of maneuvers that made experienced spacers sick just watching. What about our shields? Reinforced with spare parts from the Vythe. Their crystal technology is amazing. We might be able to survive a few direct hits. Ambassador Zelna approached Jake cautiously. Captain Murphy, your crew is preparing to fight the entire Korthak fleet? This is suicide. Maybe, Jake admitted. But we've studied their tactics for 2 days. They expect easy victories against helpless populations. They've never faced humans before. What makes humans so different? Jake thought about how to explain it. My species evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, climate changes that could wipe out entire civilizations. We learned to adapt, to fight, to never give up even when everything seems hopeless. But you are only 43 people. 43 very stubborn people, Jake corrected. Plus we have something the Korthak don't expect. What is that? We're fighting to protect someone else. That makes all the difference. Zelna's crystal skin shifted to a pale blue color. I do not understand. Jake looked out the transparent walls of the command center at the beautiful floating city. Vith families were gathering in the gardens, holding their children close. Artists were carefully packing their most precious works. Scientists were downloading cultural databases onto portable storage devices. The Korthak fight for conquest and greed, Jake explained. They expect their enemies to be motivated by the same things. But humans fight differently when we're protecting innocent people. We become something else entirely. The stories say Deathworlders are monsters. Sometimes we are, Jake admitted quietly, but only to those who threaten the people we care about. The communication system activated again. General Thrax appeared on the screen looking annoyed. Your time is up, Deathworlders. Will you surrender, or shall I demonstrate why resistance is futile? Jake stepped forward, feeling the eyes of millions of Vith upon him. Behind him stood his crew, ready to face impossible odds. In front of him was an alien general who had never met humans in actual combat. General Thrax, I have a counter-proposal. Leave this system immediately, and we won't have to show you why the galaxy fears the Deathworlders. Thrax's expression changed from annoyance to rage. You dare threaten me with one small ship? I'm not threatening you, Jake said calmly. I'm giving you fair warning. You're about to discover why humans have a reputation for being dangerous. This is your last chance to leave peacefully. Destroy them, Thrax snarled to someone off-screen. Show these mythical Deathworlders the power of the Korthak Dominion. The communication ended. Jake turned to Ambassador Zelna and the assembled Vith. You might want to take shelter. This is going to get ugly. As the Vith hurried to their emergency shelters, Jake activated his ship's communication system. All hands, this is the captain. The Korthak have refused our diplomatic offer. We are now at war. Man your battle stations and remember what we're fighting for. Through the command center's crystal walls, Jake could see the Korthak fleet moving into attack formation. 200 warships against one small exploration vessel. In any reasonable calculation, the Terra's pride should be destroyed in minutes. But Jake was counting on the Korthak never having fought humans before. They were about to learn that reasonable calculations meant nothing when Deathworlders were protecting innocent lives. The battle for Kepler 442 was about to begin. The first Korthak attack wave consisted of 20 fighter ships, small and fast vessels designed to terrorize defenseless populations. General Thrax clearly expected them to destroy the human ship quickly and efficiently. He was about to learn his first lesson about fighting Deathworlders. Danny Foster sat in the pilot's seat of the Terra's Pride, his hands dancing across the control systems. At 22, he was the youngest member of the crew, but he had been flying since he was 12 years old. More importantly, he had grown up on Luna Colony where gravity was weak and three-dimensional thinking was a survival skill. Incoming fighters, reported Lisa Carter from the sensor station. 20 ships approaching in standard attack formation. Standard is boring, Danny muttered, engaging the engines. Let's show them how humans fly. The Terra's Pride shot forward, accelerating directly toward the Korthak fighters. The alien pilots clearly expected the human ship to turn and run, or at least try to maintain a defensive position. Instead, Danny flew straight at them, using the planet's gravity to increase his speed. Danny, what are you doing? Maria Santos called from the weapons station. Something stupid, Danny replied cheerfully, pulling the ship into a spinning dive that used the planet's magnetic field to slingshot them past the fighter formation. Carla, you've got targets at close range. Chief Gunner Carla Jenkins had been waiting for this moment. She had converted the ship's mining laser into a focused beam weapon, and at close range it was devastatingly effective. As the Terra's Pride spun past the Korthak fighters, she fired continuously, slicing through their hulls like they were made of paper. 5 fighters down, she reported with grim satisfaction. 15 remaining. The surviving Korthak pilots tried to turn and follow the human ship, but Danny was already executing his next impossible maneuver. He dove toward the planet's surface, skimming so close to the atmosphere that heat began building on the ship's hull. Hull temperature rising, Tony Blake reported from engineering. We're pushing the limits here. Trust me, Danny said, pulling the ship around one of the floating Vith cities and using its gravitational field to change direction without slowing down. The pursuing Korthak fighters tried to follow the same path, but their ships were not designed for such precise maneuvering. 3 of them clipped the city's defensive barriers and exploded. In the Vith command center, Ambassador Zelna watched the battle with amazement. How is one ship defeating 20 fighters? Dr. Amy Ross was monitoring the battle from her science station. The Korthak designed their ships for intimidation and overwhelming force. They've never had to develop advanced maneuvering techniques because they always outnumber their enemies, but the human ship is much smaller. Humans evolved on a world where size doesn't matter if you're smart. Enough and crazy enough, Dr. Ross explained. We learned to survive by being unpredictable. On the Terra's Pride, Danny was proving that point. He led the remaining Korthak fighters through the asteroid belt at the edge of the system, using the floating rocks as cover and weapons. When the aliens tried to follow him between two large asteroids, he triggered explosive charges that Tony had placed earlier, sealing the gap and destroying 4 more fighters. Asteroid belt is clear, Danny announced. 8 fighters remaining, but the Korthak were learning. The surviving pilots spread out and began attacking from multiple directions, trying to overwhelm the human ship with crossfire. Their plasma cannons lit up space with deadly energy beams. This was where the second human advantage became apparent. Steve Coleman, the ship's navigator, had spent his childhood on Mars, where dust storms could last for months and navigation required split-second timing. He guided Danny through the incoming fire with precision that seemed impossible to the Korthak pilots. Left 15 degrees down 30, Steve called out, plotting safe passages between the energy beams. Rolling dive in 3-2 now. The Terra's Pride danced between the plasma bolts like a leaf in a hurricane. Every time the Korthak thought they had the human ship cornered, it would slip away through a gap that seemed too small to exist. Meanwhile, Carla Jenkins was systematically destroying the fighter formation. Her mining laser might not be as powerful as military weapons, but it was precise and she knew how to use it. One by one, the Korthak fighters fell to her accurate fire. Last fighter down, she reported as the final alien ship exploded. Fighter wave eliminated. Aboard the Korthak command ship, General Thrax stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 20 fighters destroyed by one small vessel, and the human ship had barely taken any damage. How is this possible? He demanded of his tactical officer. Unknown, General. Their ship appears to violate several laws of physics. No vessel that size should be capable of such maneuvers. Send the second wave. 50 fighters this time. Sir, perhaps we should reconsider. The humans appear more dangerous than intelligence reports suggested. Thrax grabbed his subordinate by the throat. I will not be defeated by mythical creatures. Send the second wave, then prepare the heavy cruisers for bombardment. The second wave of Korthak fighters launched, but something had changed. The alien pilots were nervous now, uncertain about fighting an enemy that defied all their tactical training. Danny Foster sensed their hesitation immediately. They're scared, he announced to the crew. Time to really show them what humans can do. What happened next became legendary throughout the galaxy. Danny led the Terra's Pride on a combat run that military academies would study for generations. He used gravity wells, magnetic fields, and stellar radiation as weapons. He flew through the debris field of destroyed ships, using the wreckage to hide his approach before striking without warning. But the most terrifying moment for the Korthak came when Danny deliberately flew his ship through the corona of the system's star. The Terra's Pride's shield screamed in protest as temperatures reached levels that would destroy most vessels. But Tony Blake had reinforced their defenses with Vythe crystal technology, and the ship survived. When the Terra's Pride emerged from the stellar fire like a phoenix, trailing superheated plasma and energy discharges, the remaining Korthak fighters simply fled. They had never seen anything like it, and their primitive minds could not process the idea of deliberately flying through a star. Second wave eliminated, Carla reported. Remaining fighters are retreating to the main fleet. In the Vythe command center, absolute silence reigned. Ambassador Zelna and the other aliens stared at the tactical display, unable to believe what they had witnessed. 70 Korthak fighters destroyed, Dr. Ross announced quietly. 0 human casualties. This is impossible, Zelna whispered. How can one ship defeat so many? Captain Jake Murphy's voice came through the communication system, calm and steady despite what his crew had just accomplished. Ambassador Zelna, this is why the galaxy fears the Deathworlders. We don't just fight to win. We fight like our survival depends on it, because that's what millions of years of evolution taught us. On the Korthak command ship, General Thrax was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. The humans were not just dangerous because of their technology or their tactics. They were dangerous because they refused to accept defeat, no matter how impossible the odds. "General," his tactical officer reported nervously, "the human ship is approaching our main fleet. What are your orders?" Thrax looked at the tactical display, where one small ship was flying directly toward 200 of the most powerful warships in the Korthak fleet. Any sane species would retreat or attempt to negotiate, but the humans kept coming, ready to face impossible odds to protect 47 million aliens they had just met. For the first time in his military career, General Thrax felt something he had never experienced before: fear. The battle for the main Korthak fleet lasted 18 hours and became the most studied military engagement in galactic history. What made it remarkable was not just that 43 humans defeated 200 warships, but how they did it. Captain Jake Murphy divided his crew into teams that worked around the clock. While Danny Foster and the navigation crew rested, pilot Kelly Wright took control of the ship. When Carla Jenkins needed a break from the weapons station, gunner Mike Torres took over. The humans fought in shifts, maintaining constant pressure on the Korthak fleet. But it was their tactics that truly terrified the enemy. The humans did not fight like any known species. They used the asteroid belt as a weapon, herding Korthak ships into collision courses with space rocks. They exploited weaknesses in alien ship design that the Korthak had never considered problems. Most shocking of all, they deliberately put themselves in danger to protect each other and the Vythe civilians. Dr. Patricia Murphy, the ship's medical officer, treated wounded crew members who immediately returned to their stations. When Engineer Bill Clark was injured by an exploding console, he continued working while she stitched his wounds. The Korthak had never encountered soldiers who simply refused to stop fighting. "Their ship should have been destroyed hours ago," General Thrax's tactical officer reported. "They've taken massive damage, but they keep repairing themselves and coming back." "How many ships have we lost?" Thrax asked, though he dreaded the answer. 137 destroyed or disabled. Many of our remaining vessels are requesting permission to retreat." Thrax stared at his tactical display in horror. The human ship was a tiny dot surrounded by the wreckage of his once mighty fleet. It should have been impossible, but the evidence was right in front of him. "General," his communication officer called out, "the humans are sending a message." Jake Murphy appeared on the main screen, his uniform torn and his face smudged with smoke. Behind him, the bridge of the Terra's Pride showed obvious battle damage, but the crew continued working at their stations. "General Thrax," Jake said calmly, "you've lost most of your fleet. Your remaining ships are damaged and demoralized. I'm offering you one last chance to surrender." "Surrender?" Thrax could barely speak the word. "You're demanding that I surrender to you." "I'm trying to save lives," Jake replied. "Yours and mine. You came here to terrorize innocent people, but instead you found humans. Now you know why the galaxy fears the Deathworlders. We don't know how to quit." Thrax looked around his command bridge. His officers were staring at him with expressions of defeat and terror. For the first time in his career, he was facing an enemy that could not be intimidated or overwhelmed. "What are your terms?" he asked quietly. "Leave this system immediately. Never return. Spread the word throughout the Korthak Dominion that the Vythe are under human protection. And if I refuse," Jake's expression hardened, "then we'll finish what you started. And I promise you, General, humans are much better at finishing fights than starting them." The communication ended. Thrax stood in silence for several minutes, considering his options. He could continue fighting, but the tactical situation was hopeless. The humans had proven they could destroy his entire fleet if necessary. More importantly, he had learned something about the Deathworlders that changed everything. They were not just dangerous because they were violent. They were dangerous because they were willing to sacrifice everything to protect others. "Signal the fleet," he ordered finally. "We're withdrawing from the system." "Sir, the Dominion High Command will not be pleased." "The Dominion High Command has never fought humans," Thrax replied. "Trust me, they don't want to start now." As the surviving Korthak ships limped away from Kepler 442, the Terra's Pride returned to orbit around the Vythe homeworld. The crew was exhausted, their ship was badly damaged, but they had accomplished the impossible. In the Vythe capital city, Ambassador Zelna stood before the Planetary Council with tears of gratitude flowing down their crystal features. "The humans have saved us," they announced. "The Deathworlders are not monsters. They are guardians." Word of the battle spread quickly throughout the galaxy. Within days, Jake Murphy began receiving communication requests from dozens of alien species. Some wanted to thank him. Others wanted to hire human protection services. A few wanted to surrender preemptively, just in case they had ever done anything to offend Earth. "Captain," Lisa Carter reported, "I'm getting distress calls from 12 different star systems. They all want human assistance against various threats." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. They were tired, but their eyes showed the same determination that had carried them through the battle. "How many of these calls are legitimate emergencies?" "All of them, sir. Pirates, slavers, natural disasters. It looks like word is spreading that humans respond to distress calls." Dr. Amy Ross looked up from her science station. "Captain, we can't possibly help everyone. We're just one ship." "Maybe," Jake admitted. "But we can try, and maybe other humans will join us when they hear what we're doing out here." 3 months later, Jake's prediction came true. The Terra's Pride was joined by the Earthships Guardians Hope, Rescue 1, and Helping Hand. Other human crews had volunteered for what became known as the Terran Protection Fleet. The organization was completely unofficial and operated without government backing. Human volunteers simply responded to distress calls throughout the galaxy, offering protection to peaceful species and aid to those in need. Ambassador Zelna visited Jake one last time before the Terra's Pride left to answer another distress call. The Vythe had become humanity's first official allies, sharing their advanced crystal technology in exchange for protection against future threats. "Captain Murphy," Zelna said, "I must ask you something. Why do humans risk so much for strangers? What drives your species to fight impossible battles for people you barely know?" Jake thought about the question carefully. "I think it's because we remember what it was like to be helpless. Earth was a dangerous place for a long time. We survived because we learned to help each other even when it was dangerous. And now you help the entire galaxy." "We try," Jake replied simply. "It's what humans do." As the Terra's Pride prepared to leave for its next mission, Jake received a final message from General Thrax. The Korthak commander had been demoted and exiled for his defeat at Kepler 442, but he wanted Jake to know something important. "The Korthak Dominion fears you now," the message said. "But more than that, we respect you. You showed mercy when you could have destroyed us completely. Perhaps there is hope for peace between our species after all." Jake smiled as he read the message. It was the best possible outcome. The galaxy now knew that humans were dangerous when threatened, but also merciful to those who surrendered. The reputation of the Deathworlders was spreading, but not as conquerors or destroyers. They were becoming known as the species that answered distress calls, no matter how dangerous or impossible the situation. Across the galaxy, peaceful civilizations began adding a new line to their emergency protocols. If all else fails, call the humans. The Terra's Pride jumped to hyperspace, carrying its crew toward their next mission. Behind them, the Vythe continued their peaceful existence under the protection of their new human friends. Ahead lay unknown dangers and impossible odds. Jake Murphy could not have been happier. After all, facing impossible odds to help strangers was what humans did best. It was why the galaxy feared the Deathworlders, and why that fear was exactly what was needed to keep the innocent safe. The legend of humanity had begun, and it was a legend of protection, courage, and hope in the darkest corners of space.